Ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dave Crouch, and this is Policy Talks, brought to you each month by the Williamson Inc., our Williamson County Chamber of Commerce. We are thrilled to have all you joining us on WCTV Channel 3 as well as on WAKM 950. We have our special guest with us this morning, our Mayor of Williamson County, Mr. Rogers Anderson. Rogers, we're happy to have you with us. Appreciate you taking the time to come and give us an update on what's going on around the county.
Well, thank you, Dave. I appreciate being here.
Of course, our lives changed back in early March, late February, depending on what you were looking at. But the coronavirus or COVID-19 or whatever you choose to call it has changed our world a lot, not only around the world, but right here in Williamson County and Franklin and Brentwood and Owensville. What is the latest on the numbers, Mr. Mayor, and how is it looking?
Well, Dave, I think first of all, I think over the last 30 days, we have seen a spike about 30 days out past. And over the last 30 days, we're trying to get that spike down. And certainly during the last week, those numbers are looking more favorable from a standpoint of Williamson County. I know there's so many different numbers out there, Dave, from the feds and from the state and trying to keep up with it. And it's a full-time job that our emergency management, Todd Horton and Bill Jorgensen do, getting that information and getting it sent back out over the different webs. But the numbers are not where we want them to be, but they are certainly improving each and every day. And I think I do want to say thank you to all of those people out there that are helping us get those numbers down and keep them flat so we can keep business going and schools trying to get opened up and just for the overall public health of our community.
Right. Now, about a month ago, I think on the 6th, you signed an executive order requiring everyone to wear a mask when they're in public around Williamson County. You made a lot of friends, a few enemies by doing that. But what did you see? What was it that pushed you over the fence, as you might say, to decide to make that decision?
So if I could frame the entire scenario, it was on August the 3rd, the order actually will run out. So it was good for 30 days. So on July the 3rd, the decision was made to ask everyone and mandate everyone to wear a mask. But that decision was made over the long weekend from a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and talking to a lot of people, looking at a lot of numbers, our medical community, our two superintendents of school, Jason Golden, the Williamson County Schools, and David Snowden, Dr. David Snowden over the Franklin Special. And at that time, they were still crunching their numbers. Their school boards make those decisions on what to do about schools, but it was imperative that they push those numbers as low as they possibly could so we could get back into the classrooms. In dealing with the medical community, we were looking at Williamson Medical Center specifically. We were listening to the healthcare professionals out of Nashville, particularly Vanderbilt, which is a lot of the research, and Dr. Schaffner, and trying to get our arms around what was really happening here in Williamson County. We also reached out to all of the city mayors and um, their directors, the city managers, and their legal staff and then working with Jeff Mosley and Berger Mosley and Lisa Carson was involved. So we tried to get a lot of input over that long weekend. We had gotten word that the governor was going to do this, and we wanted to be in a position to either do a strong mandate, like we did, or a suggestion. I reached out personally to some other surrounding mayors to see what they thought, and they were doing the same research. I think you asked what was their one thing that put us over. After reading and studying with the lawyers, that uh, the authority did lie with the governor, and the governor was transferring for 30 days that decision. If individual cities and counties wanted to do the mandate, he gave the authority to the county mayors. But I would be remiss to say that I wanted the support of whatever we did with the city mayors, likewise, to make this work, because the
Right.
enforcement piece is also involved in that.
Right.
But the one thing that just really threw me over the to make me look at it and was the that masks are used every single day in surgery, every single day, for the doctors and the nurses that were in there, and and it's to keep germs from going from their mouth, or when they're doing their surgery, certain not to infect the patient. So
Right.
that sent a message to me. The mask did help to help hold those numbers down. It's not going to bring a cure, and so that order was given out on July the 3rd. It would carry over to August 3rd, and certainly you characterized it right. Many people wrote in and expressed their opinions one way or the other. And now we have seen our numbers kind of flatten out. That wasn't totally due to the mask, but I think people are getting more aware of their surroundings and what they're doing. And we all make choices. We all have opportunities to help our neighbors. But it was a public health issue, and public health department um, strongly felt that we should do this. There are 89 counties like Williamson County that do not have a public health doctor. And there are 6 counties, the big metropolitan areas, and then there's one up in Upper East Tennessee that can make those choices, like the mayor of Davidson County can make their own determination based off the health, the doctor of health in the public health arena. And
Right.
so we stepped out there. We thought it was best, and the majority of our counties surrounding Davidson County now have got that mandate.
So, as I understand it, the is it your authority that expires on Monday the 3rd, or does that do you have the option to extend that mandate further?
So the only powers that a county mayor has are what's expressively given to him through Tennessee Code Annotate or through Nashville, in this case, the governor. And so the governor gave us that authority for 30 days to do what we thought was best for our community. Uh, he believes, and I've heard him say this, that local control, local decisions are sometimes the best decisions as opposed to Washington or Nashville. But it does run out at midnight, and we have not received, as of right now anyway, we've not received any word to extend that order or to give the authority back to me again. We expect some kind of communication on that today or tomorrow, but as we talk right now, that decision or that executive order from the governor himself has not been exercised.
So, if you do get that authority, are you going to extend it, or are you going to?
Yeah, we will. Again, we'll reach out to our different affiliates. We'll look at those numbers real hard. I personally think that the masks have made a significant difference in holding those numbers steady and getting them down. And I think the thing sometimes we've overlooked is also the business community, although there none of these things we like to do. Since March 5th, I think was the official day, March 3rd. I mean, we've been trying to figure out what's right and what to do and how to handle it, just like everyone else has across the nation. And we learn every single day. Um, our our testing center out at the Ag Center, where Kenny Wallace oversees, we've on the highest day we've done a little over 1,100, and the lowest is around 350. And right now, we're still having some 250 to 350 people a day come in on a 4-hour workday to be checked, and anyone can be checked for that. And of course, the more you test, the more positives you're going to get. But that's the whole concept of this is find out who has it and then do contact tracing and let those people go to work and ask people that have tested positive, they need to stay home for 14 days and monitor their own health. And those people that have been around them, we're finding out this virus, this germ, I call it a rascal. If you're old enough, you know what that means. It's a rascal, and it's permeating just about everything we do in the way we do it, our business model, um, and just like we're doing today. There's no way a year ago we would have thought we'd been doing a virtual show. We'd have been over at Columbia State.
Right.
So
It-
I expect that order to come through in the next few days. I talked to the mayors over the last 48 hours, and they've given me their input, and so we'll make that decision here in the next, if we get it, and then by I guess Monday morning. Is that right? Today's the last day of July, and so sometime Monday, Sunday, late Sunday night, we'll see what happens.
All right, sir. Now, is everything capacity wise out at Williamson Medical still okay? Are they, I know they were getting close to capacity here a few days ago, but and actually had several of their employees, I think, that had tested positive. So, um, what's the status there?
So, in talking to, of course, Don Webb is the CEO, but he's not a doctor any more than I am. So, we rely on those medical people to make those decisions. And the doctor of record that we could communicate with is Dr. Andy Russell and Dr. Levi Benson. And both of those gentlemen are down in the ER and they're monitoring uh, hour by hour. And talking to Dr. Russell, it's kind of flattened out. We're kind of um, we're higher than what we were in March and April in the number of COVID patients, but we're averaging in that range of 15 to 20 per day. That doesn't mean everyone is on a ventilator. It just simply means they're being monitored in our COVID wing. We have a separate COVID wing out there um, that is detached away from the normal population. In fact, if you went out there before you even go in the ER room, you're greeted at the door with a nurse or someone taking your temperature, asking those questions so they can separate and so they don't infiltrate the two. The two you still have healthcare needs. I think what we've really learned, Dave, is that after the 4 months we've been going at it, everyone's tired, everyone's frustrated, everyone's ready to get on with life like we used to have, and it's not there yet.
Right.
And the employees now are just really um, worn out from dealing with this. Plus, our employees at the hospital, just like employees over here, they come in contact, they're testing positive. And so then you have to look at your labor force, your workforce. And so part of the decision the hospital is having to make is not only for the good of our residents and those people that are coming in from other counties, but it's for the good of their employees. And nurses are just like you and I, they're human beings. They're pretty super, don't get me wrong, but they get sick and they're exposed. And so there's a lot of shuffling that goes on. But we do have capacity, and
Yeah.
that's a good thing. But we have restricted the elective surgery that only elective surgery that you can have uh, outpatient surgeries that do not require you to stay overnight. And that's for your safety, but it's also be sure not to use up any capacity because you can have a surge just within 24 to 48 hours on this rascal.
Right. Well, we certainly are thankful to have all these professionals that are doing their best to keep us healthy and or to get us healthy after we get sick, and we certainly want to support them in any way we can. And I know the the citizens around the county appreciate having Williamson Medical right here. That's such a good facility, a good staff of people there. Um, Jason Golden had kind of a tough job here lately. He's made a few decisions, and some of them have, or all of them have been controversial, I think, and about as many people like him as don't like him. Have you got any advice for him?
Well, I saw him. we talk almost every day. We either catch each other in the hall or.
I should mention that Jason Golden is our superintendent of schools here. Most everybody knows that, but
Yeah, and Jason has got a hard job working in this environment that we're in. And he indicated to me the other day that um, they either love him or hate him. There's no middle ground, just like you decided. And my advice to him is look at the medical. Listen to the medical people. Look at the numbers. That's a decision that his school board and him have to make. I know it wasn't done. It was not done in a vacuum. They worked on it for days and weeks trying to figure out the solution and the avenue they've taken to allow the kindergarten, first, and second graders to be in school and everyone else remotely. Um, I think most everyone realizes, and I echo that, and I have echoed that to Jason, that our children need to be back in school, and learning occurs best in school. There's some information out over the last 24 hours now that has finally come out that I'm sure that they had privy to before the general public did, that the virus itself also does um, spread within close contact within schools. And so they're having to juggle how do you have I mean, of course we've got about 42,000 children, boys and girls in schools. um, 9 of those are my grandkids, so I'm very concerned about that, and making that right choice. And I believe that learning occurs best one-on-one with the teacher and in a setting. And it's a very difficult thing because teachers get tested positive, or a student can bring it in and test it, bring it over to the teacher or to another student. And I know there's studies out there that you can find a study to back up your philosophy on almost anything you do in this world and life. But I think
amen.
they're looking at those numbers that you asked about early on, Dave. Where are we at? And they're holding steady and coming down. There's not as many positive cases, and we're beginning to see recovery. And I think the magic bullet for Jason Golden and the administration and school board was a magic number of about zero point 0.6. And when that number gets there, they start having conversations. I know they're having conversations about how do we get those kids back into classroom, and how do we have those teachers there, and how do we do that in a safe environment, and how do we maintain that over a period of time. You also have to look at your senior nursing homes, your senior living centers that they have. Oftentimes, those numbers are skewed in a particular area, and they're isolated. Those people are isolated within that unit. So you have to look at that they don't affect the schools. Those numbers, those people that are in those senior living places that are well run, doing the best job they can, but oftentimes they're isolated to that area, but they show up in your chart as another hotspot or another area. So
Right.
it's a tough call, but I think Jason David Snowden, all of us believe that learning occurs best in the classroom with a professional teacher, but we got to keep everybody safe. I'm hoping that once we roll out this plan, I don't know the exact date off the top of my head, August 8th or 9th, that school's supposed to open up. And I'm hoping that our numbers are really flattening out and they'll be able to go back to the drawing board and said, hey, the numbers are good enough now. Uh, let's try to get our kids back in school. And then you've got this thing called the school bus. It's close contact. And how
I
do
was
you
going to ask you how that works. Well, you have
well,
a school
it
bus.
works by putting the key. It works by putting the key in the ignition and start it. But the kids
Right.
are. I'm being a little humorous there, but it's a difficult thing to transport children in a close environment, and fortunately, most of our buses don't have air conditioning, so you want that fresh air. I mean, there's just so many things that evolve around it, and getting our children to school and then getting them home safely and having good drivers. You can only put so many kids on the bus when you're trying to do spacing, and we can't find bus drivers now
Right.
uh, to drive the normal routes that we have. So it's a recipe for a lot of discussion, but I think they'll get there if we get the numbers down.
The county commission was kind enough to provide funding to buy, I think they call them Chromebooks for any of the kids that were not able to, I guess, afford them uh, of their own. And I guess my question is, do we have internet service uh, everywhere we need it to do that? And are we making any progress there?
Well, to answer your question point blank, no, we don't have internet service in all throughout our county. I think Middle Tennessee Electric and United Communications out of the Chapel Hill, College Grove area formed a partnership a couple of years back, formed a merger, and they're running those internet lines all along the southern quarter of our county, College Grove, Bethesda, Flat Creek, and then swinging back around and going on out of. Ultimately, Middle Tennessee Electric is trying to get cable service to wherever they have power lines, which is everywhere just about.
Right.
And then you've got traditional, really big boys, AT&T and Comcast, but we still don't have, and some private services beyond that, but we still don't have sufficient internet service in so many places in our rural areas. And so Chromebooks were issued, and even some little attachments they call hotspots, hot boxes that allow you to connect, but you have to have a direct shot into one of our towers, radio towers, for that to really work and work sufficiently. So
Right.
we're working with the libraries, we're working with everything that we possibly can, given the parameters. The county itself is not in the cable business. That's usually done by the big boys. The city has some cable service that they run. We do too for our own businesses, but we hook up with Comcast, we hook up with AT&T, or we hook up with city and county to get those services here within our cities. Brentwood and Franklin, for the most power, most of our cities have good internet service. It's when you get out into the unincorporated area, Dave.
Right. Well, it's that's getting more important as people work from home and um,
Well, one of the things, if I could interrupt you, that we've seen, there's been a push for the last 5 or 10 years about telemedicine. Um, Telemedicine is a way that you can communicate with the doctor, the hospital, et cetera, without physically going in. And
yeah,
in fact, some of the issues that when the legislators in Nashville go back for their special session to deal with 2 or 3 items, telemedicine has been identified as an area that they want to look at and communicate with. But telemedicine in itself is not very effective. You need that Wi-Fi. You need good connection to be able to get that. Now
right.
you and I both can take a picture of a bumblebee or a sting or something. We both know how to take a picture on our phones and send that to our doctors, but that's primitive forms of telemedicine. You need to have a little bit more sophisticated that. But we've all probably done that. You got a bug bite or a sting bite, and swelling occurs, and you you send it to your doctor, and he looks at it and says, "Yep, you got a sting bite. You better come in."
Right. Uh, they need Zoom to check out your body language and other things that help them diagnose what's going on. I'm sure, but it's uh, rapidly changing world. At least school sports appears to be back. Football, we might actually have some football this season, and that'll make life better. I know for a lot of us. What about elections? Are we seeing any changes in the patterns there? The number of requests for absentee ballots, things like that. How is that changing things?
Well, thank you, Dave, for asking that question. Early voting will finish up tomorrow, August the 1st, at noontime, at all of our early voting precincts. And one of them is over here at the administrative complex. Yesterday, on Thursday, the 30th, was one of the busiest days that we've had for in-person voting. I have not seen or heard the absentee numbers from yesterday this morning. But yesterday was a very busy day and numbers of people coming in, and there's a steady line. There's not a backup for you to vote, but there's a steady line that people come in. We did some things over here to kind of change the way people come in to vote. If you come to vote under the guidelines that are put out by the election commission, uh, um, you're not required to have a mask. You're not required to have your temperature. You can just come in and vote. Now, we highly encourage that, and the vast majority of people are coming in with masks uh, and to go in to vote. And they're not lingering around in the halls. They go vote and they get out of here. So, I, from the standpoint of being busy, the men and women that are working in the election um, commission under the oversight of Chad Gray, um, I know they're extremely busy, and the real challenge will be on those absentee votes or mail-in votes. It is an absentee and mail-in are two different terms. Absentee is you physically can't get out and get here to vote. Maybe you're in a senior living area and you can't physically get out. That's what absentee was for, but it was broadened to pick up a new term now that you can vote by mail in, and those numbers will be quite large. And I wouldn't expect results from the election within an hour of the closing of the polls next week when that happens either.
So you do think they are equipped to count all those
They
mail?
do. They have to validate those and count those, and they'll have to wait until election day because uh, many things could happen between now and election day, as you know.
Right.
But that's when they're done. So it's going to take some time to get all those counted.
Right. Now this whole pandemic is also having an economic impact on uh, not only the county but the folks that have lost their jobs, the businesses that have been shut down because of it. Revenue wise, what kind of impact are you seeing uh, for the county and the amount of funds that you're going to have to distribute as time goes on?
Well, it's a tough call. This year's budget committee that within the county commission was overseen by Paul Webb, county commissioner out of Brentwood, and so him and his committee, along with our staff here, Nina Graham and myself, we had pretty well put that thing to bed by about February, March. And we were rolling along. And then March 3rd, March 5th hit. And we had the first case in the state in Williamson County.
Mm,
And that completely undone within a matter of weeks everything that we had put together.
right.
Uh, Within days, things were beginning to shut down and pull back, and people were concerned. And so, immediately, in the role that I play as the chief financial officer of the county, I went up to the schools because the schools they get in the operating side, they get about 65% of our budget, and throw in the debt side to pay for the school buildings and the capital call. It's closer to 73% of the total tax dollars. So I went up to Jason. I said, Jason, the parameters have changed. The guidelines we put out, we need to go to a zero-based budget. And basically, what that means is last year's budget until further notice. We may have to change that again, but we feel like we can duplicate what we did, the budget that we started on July the 1st, 2019,
Right.
which basically meant that all raises were off the table, all growth, except for growth items, everything else needed to be revisited. And wherever your dollars were in your budget, if you needed a little bit more for telephone bill as opposed to utility, move it around within your individual line items, but don't come in and ask for any more money except for growth. And we knew what our growth numbers were expected to be.
Right.
Uh, and then we went to work looking at the best models that we have. Um, this state is a sales tax driven state, and this county works off from sales tax and property tax. Cities, oftentimes their budget is made up of 50% or better off from sales tax. And when people aren't buying in the bricks and mortar stores, we kind of thought, well, that's not going to be good.
Right.
50% of your revenue.
Look,
But
really.
all of a sudden, everyone started ordering online. Some of the things we took for granted, we many of us have been ordering pizza for years, but all of a sudden we were ordering everything online from appliances. It's kind of funny to me during this period of time. My upstairs air conditioning unit went out, and I like to never. The guy that I have used for years, he said, "Well, has anybody there got corona?" I guess, has anybody got the virus? Well, I happen to have a son. I think he was like the second or third one in the state who was living with me, him and his wife and three children. They moved back from Texas, and they weren't real happy about coming out and wanting to put a unit in. But I assured them that they would not be around him, and they did do that. And shortly thereafter, I needed a dishwasher. The dishwasher broke. Life still keeps going on, and I called a couple of people around town, and that wasn't a good conversation. But of course, you and I grew up, Dave. We're old enough, grew up with brothers and sisters that one of you washed and one of you dried. You rotated that every week, and you argued the whole time you were doing it. But I don't want to go back to that model. And so for 2 or 3 days, we had to wash dishes by hand until we could figure out how to get a dishwasher. But that you can order those online now. You can have them delivered, and you can put them in yourself. And so we found out, going back to the budget, we found out that our our sales tax wouldn't we hope wouldn't be off as bad as we thought, but we had really no strong models to be able to go in. The state sends Karen Paris, our trustee, the sales tax numbers about 45 days after the close of a month. So at the end of March, the best you could see those results would be the first part of June,
Hmm.
because time all the businesses submit their sales tax and you get that number back out to the cities and counties. It wasn't current; it was already history, and we were all starving for this data so we could, because we're in the middle of budget, we're really on the
Right.
backside of it. And so some different modeling, some different companies came out with some um, artificial intelligence and being able to do some creative things, trying to, you could go to your credit card company. I mean, they had that kind of data. They knew when Dave Crouch and Rogers Anderson bought anything and immediately. So, there were companies modeling stuff like that and seeing where your sales tax dollars were going, who was purchasing. I was very concerned about our sales. The sales tax does not make up a great deal of money on the county side. Property taxes do though, but our property tax collections, they closed out at the end of February. About 98% of the people have paid their property taxes by that time, which is normal. And Karen was reporting those numbers. Karen Paris, our trustee, was reporting those numbers on a weekly basis and saying, our collections are in, they're holding steady. We've got to look at other revenue. And then you've got the gasoline tax. Well, all of these taxes that you get. Nobody's traveling anymore. Nobody's going to Nashville day in and day out. So your gasoline sales tax. But now alcohol sales were going up. Grocery sales were growing up. And so it was a mixed bag. And I'll get to the final end. So at the final end, when we were actually able to vote on our budget in July, we've come to realize we're off on our revenue. The wheel tax, so many different avenues of taxes and fees that we have, um, we're still there.
Right.
The new home construction fees, we probably issued more swimming pool permits during the last 100 days than we have done in the last year to year and a half, because people had to figure out how to live within their house, and if they had children, they had to figure out a way to get them out of there. They were going to tear their house up, and for like my grandkids. So you figure out different ways. So yeah, it's affected us. It's affected the cities more than the counties. I heard Eric Stuckey the other day say that sales tax revenue was off about 9 or 10%, whereas the county, that's not as big a number. But we operated on a last year's budget. We can make amendments to that. I'm thankful to those small businesses out there that have been able to weather the storm. And it's not been easy for them. I know that. But the big box stores have been helpful. And so those sales tax dollars that come into the cities oftentimes wind up in the coffers of schools too. So
Right.
we're watching it.
Well, Matt Largen just reminded me that Williamson County still has the lowest unemployment of any county in the state, which we are thankful for that. And I think it's 6.7%, he says. And
But isn't that amazing? Matt would have to also admit that in the month of January, February, we were 2.5 or 3, and now we're at 6, and we're the lowest. So that tells you that even in our county, people are looking for jobs or needing jobs.
right. Now, the media reports that our AAA rating for the county is not in jeopardy because of all this. And I think you mentioned that you were looking at refinancing a lot of the county's bonds maybe this past week. Uh, did that happen, and is that going to benefit the county?
First of all, thanks, Dave. Great question. We did this week. We submitted through our bond councils, Sam Cruz with Stevens and um, um, Jeff Odom with Bassberry and Sims, our legal staff. We put together some um, $50 million worth of bonds that were strictly for schools. We kind of pulled those out in March when all this, we were uncertain with the market. And let's understand the way a bond works. It's like a mortgage on your house. So we packaged up two bonds, two mortgages of one of 32 million and one of about $15 million. and to do 100% of the school projects. We have to put those bonds out based on what they're called. They're rural debt or general debt. And the difference is the Franklin Special School District and the high schools within those geographic areas. That's the way you have to set them up. That's a legal issue. But on the $32 million bond we sent out, we had 14 bidders. Um, excuse me, we had 9 bidders, and those projects are everything from purchasing, finishing up the school over in the east side of the county, buying some more land. Remember, we're still running government, we're still growing, and kids are still coming here. We're
Right.
building, trying to find some land for a K-8 school out in the eastern part of the county, and then general maintenance that you have to have, and then some energy conservation matters. We were fortunate enough out of those 9 bidders that we got, one company bid for 20 years, 1.45. That was just sealed up
5%.
1.45 for 20 years.
Hmm.
Would you like to borrow some of that money, Dave?
I would like to borrow some of that if you could borrow another million or two from me. I
Well,
could really buy a big farm with that.
So the next part of that was a $15 million general obligation school bond, and that was for 20 years. We don't do anything over 20 years, and we got the winning bid went to Raymond James for 1.46.
Good.
Yeah, I'm sure you've heard of that company, and that's to finish up Page High School and some other maintenance areas out in the county. So we borrowed close to $50 million for 20 years at an average of about 1.45. We are looking at our other bonds, but that market's fluctuating and bouncing all over the board, and you gotta have that timing just right. We will go back to the market again on another school project and some other projects this fall. Um, so it's a great time to borrow money if you have to borrow money,
Right.
and if the needs are there. We have slowed down our operations, but we haven't slowed down knowing what we've got to do in the future. We're also paying off some of the old money, the old bonds that we have, and we're looking at to see if there's any savings in some other bonds. We did refinance some bonds back in March. We refinanced. We had some 20-year, 22-year old bonds, some Build American bonds under a prior presidential administration of President Obama, and they had some special money, and we were able to fortunately be in that. And those were coming up. We felt like we could beat that, so we refinanced those on 10-year notes. And I'm going to round off here. We refinanced. We were able to save about $6 to $7 million over the life of that bond, which was 10 years, and we got that for 0.93 and 0.94% for 10 years, if I remember correctly. It was under 1%. So we're constantly looking at that. Every time you go out for a bond issuance, Moody's, Standard and Poor, they have to re-rate you. And so one of the things we got this year was just, it didn't take them very long. They re-rated us as a AAA, which is the best you can get. We're one of 2 counties in the state. We were the first county to have it, and Hamilton County got it after us. So we have a good credit rating. We have money in the bank. It's well run. I'm thankful to people like Nina Graham and many other departments that watch the P's and Q's. And so we're poised for the growth that we have to have. We just need to watch our revenue cycle, which is the property taxes, sales taxes, jobs, and all of that, all those fees.
We could spend another hour or two just on budget discussion. I kind of went over the new budget line by line last night, and it's there are a lot of items that would be fun to discuss this morning. But let's switch gears a little bit. And there was a report in, I believe it was the Tennessean here recently, that about pointing out how I-840 is now the hotspot for new home construction. I would probably expand that to include Highway 96 between here and Murfreesboro and almost the entire eastern part of the county. Uh, what are you seeing as far as building permits this year versus last year? Is that slowing down? Is it speeding up? What's going on with
So,
our county?
if I can kind of frame that question a little bit different, that the growth pattern of Williamson County projection for unincorporated Williamson County. Now, I'm not talking about Franklin and Brentwood and the cities, Spring
Right.
Hill, Thompson Station, but the unincorporated part, our building permits are up from where they were last year on a year-by-year basis.
Hmm.
Um, in fact, in February and March, we had some of the highest permits issued that we'd had. You'd had to go back 15 to 20 years to find those months that were
Hmm.
greater. When you're in the county, when you're in the unincorporated area, for the most part, homes are built on septic tanks. Now there are some new modern technology that's been invented, and so larger subdivisions are using some different systems to be able to get those homes in. Also, the first part of this year, the county commission uh, voted under the comprehensive plan to increase the size of a lot to 5 acres. Now, there's some exceptions to that around the Triune community. That's called a hamlet. Leapers Fork, Grassland community. There's a handful of those little communities that um, that are carved out, and they have either stricter or a little different guidelines. But currently in our county, we are working on the zoning. So if people are listening to this through WAKM or watching it on TV this morning, we're in the process of doing our zoning to match up with what the county commissioner said. We want 5 acre lots, and they voted 20. I think it was 23 or 22 to 1 that all future lots in the subdivision would be large scale.
Hmm.
And so now the zoning has to follow that. So what we're doing by doing this avenue is slowing down that density load that occurs in the subdivision. Now that wasn't always popular on that night's vote at the county commission. We had public meetings, had a lot of communication. Joe Horn, Mike Madsen, Chris Duranson spent a great deal of time putting this together with our consultant that we had to get out into the community and explain the way this works. There are some modeling out there in other parts of the country that say a 5 acre lot um, over a period of time brings as much as 5 1 acre lots, if that makes sense what I've said, and in fast growing communities. And our existing people are saying, slow this thing down. Now, I'm sure Matt would confirm, he could probably chat us in here. I think our number one state for new out of state growth is probably still California. And we're getting a ton of people coming in from all parts of the world, a lot of diversity moving into our community, a lot of new ideas for all of the jobs that um, Williamson Inc. and Matt and all of us work together to help create these jobs.
Right.
Government doesn't create jobs. We're just a conduit. And the cities within our county, they have their own rules and regulations. But the growth in the county continues to be strong. The growth outside the cities is a real challenge for us because of the network of roads. Most of them are, Eddie Hood will tell you, most of them are less, they're certainly not ideal to put super highways through. So we're looking at how do we build stronger, wider, safer roads, but yet leave the integrity and the character that so many of the people around here will come to love and expect. You go down by your house on Lewisburg Pike, uh, it it it's amazing the number of the cars that go through in front of your house every day.
believe me.
And I live over off in Del Rio where they're putting, the McCatcher extension right across it, and the number of cars that are coming in and out. They're all over our county. Maybe not in the last 90 days. More people are not driving as
Right.
much, but clearly, Dave, our county continues to grow, and clearly, our county continues to look at another alternate ways to kind of not stop it, but manage it and slow it down. Because my final comment on this, unless you ask me something else, we're at
I've got
about
one more
200.
question.
Yeah, we got about 235, 240,000 people. The census is going on right now. Please fill that out. We're expected to have by the year 2045, just 25 years away, close to 500,000 people. So if we're going to grow a doubling in 25 years, what took us 221 years to get here. So we better have things right, and we've got to figure out a way to do it, and it's got to make sense so we don't wind up like some cities that are just totally off the chart now.
Well, here's your curveball for this
All right.
morning, uh, borrowing Tom Lawrence's phrase there. But I hadn't seen the data in a while, but the vast majority of the growth in our county is inside the city limits of Franklin, Nolensville, Spring Hill, and to maybe a limited extent still in Brentwood. Uh, the and I guess Fairview is got a fair amount of growth as well. And the county doesn't have any control over that. You can zone the unincorporated areas 5-acre lots, but still the cities are growing pretty rapidly. And as you pointed out, about 73% of your budget is for schools. And so then the county has to figure out how to educate all the kids that move into all these new houses. And my question is, wouldn't metropolitan government be more efficient, and wouldn't it be easier if all those decisions were wrapped into one governmental entity, and uh, make that easier on all of you public officials?
Well, that's a good curveball. um, well, I was a county commissioner for 16 years, and I've been mayor for 18. So my answer to you is I'm not in favor of metropolitan form of government. And there's a reason for that in my mind. I think some of those things, the centralization of power is a good thing. And we try to do a lot of that currently with our cities and counties. You heard me say early on, I didn't make the decision to do the mask mandate without my cities. And we have partnerships all over with our cities. From Brentwood, we just opened up a new splash pad where we both contributed. So there's not a city we don't work with, trying to have memorandums of understanding. Metropolitan form of government sounds easy, but the first thing that I always see about metropolitan form of government is decentralization, I guess is a good way of putting it. But I think your schools suffer. I don't know of a single metropolitan city in Tennessee that has the great school systems that we offer in the two systems here and the private system. I don't know of a single metropolitan area that has really super schools where they're struggling how to do it. Now we struggle for funding, but I don't. I'm of the opinion that Brentwood and Franklin and Nolensville, Thompson Station, Spring Hill, and Fairview, they all have good men and women that serve in the leadership capacity, and they need to make those decisions at their level. I can't imagine 6 cities all wanting to have the same, uh, be reading off the same ledger sheet. Not sure it could be done, but I, I believe we've got something mighty unique here, Dave. And I understand the economics, and I understand centralization does help curb
But
costs.
Could I summarize by saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it?
Yeah, thank you, Dave. Got me. You were the catcher and the pitcher on that one, on that curveball.
You've uh, you've got a couple more years left on your current
Uh,
term, and just curious as to what you are have hoped to accomplish this time around, and are you going to be able to get it all done in 2 years?
well, Dave, I've enjoyed it. I love the people for letting me be the mayor. I am so thankful to be a mayor of this county, and you and I have been around a long time, and we've made decisions, both popular and unpopular. But it's not just me; it's all the people, the cities, and we all get along. And it's just like the mask mandate. There were some pretty nasty um, mask mandate emails, um, but I think most people understand we're trying to do the best job that we can with it to try to do it. There are some things that I want to see accomplished over the next 2 years. One of them is our animal control center. Hopefully, we'll get that behind us. We've been working on that for 5 or 6 years. We've got to look at our juvenile court system. It's just it's overwhelming. Uh, Judge Guffey does a heck of a job down there, but we got to have some space, and that's a 55 to $60 million purchase.
Right.
We need a new jail. The current jail's 31 years old. Dusty does a great job of overseeing it. Dusty Rhodes and his predecessor before that, but it's 30 years, and it needs, you know, a lot of things have changed in 30 years, and I know we got to wrap it up. And our court system, as we grow, more and more people use the court system. So a new jail, juvenile, and all that's probably somewhere around $250 million.
Hmm.
How do you pay for that? Oh, well, by the way, we're still building schools. And by the way, we're still building roads. And by the way, you're still doing all of these other things you've got to do. And oh, by the way, nobody wants to raise taxes, including 24 county commissioners and myself. This year, it passed unanimously. So you've got to do all those creative things and keep this community vibrant. And you do need your cities, and the cities can do their own tax base and over there. And for the most part, they don't raise taxes. But um, I've enjoyed it. I have not made a decision what I want to do beyond this. Um, but so long as the good Lord gives me good health and a good mind, I'm appreciative of that. And for the majority of people have always supported the things that I needed to get done, and they've supported me at the polls.
Well, uh, I guess the same phrase would work on the last question as it would on this one is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We appreciate all you do. Appreciate the time you've taken this morning to kind of bring us up to date on all the things going on around the county. We could spend another hour talking about all the things I'd like to pick your brain about, but our time is about up, and we just want to say thanks for all you do, and thanks for the time you spent with us this morning. I also want to thank all those that have tuned in this morning listening to us. Creed Henderson over at WCTV and his team are doing an amazing job making us look good, and Tom Lawrence at WKM 950 always gets us out all across the county live as we conduct these sessions. Chamber staff does a lot of work behind the scenes to make these things happen. Matt Largen and Nancy Conway and Kel McDowell, Griffin. We just appreciate all those people efforts, and AT&T Vanderbilt also make a financial contribution just to make sure it all comes together. So hope that all of you will be back with us on August the 28th. We will be back with probably another mayor, depending on whether the state decides to have that special session down on Capitol Hill. So again, thanks for being with us this morning, and we will see you next month.